Right, so we are on developments with me, Johnny.
I'm Ben.
I'm Jack.
And this is Enter the Void. So a top-down cooperative sci-fi action RPG, taking you through an expansive colony of lethal, bloodlusting aliens, where your only hope of survival is to escape a hive and retrieve the fractured parts of your spacecraft. So our story follows a lone astronaut aboard the Orion 14 spacecraft, known only as the Traveller. Being tasked with the ensured survival of the human race, he was sent on a 160-year voyage to the Rigel star system, where he surveyed Rigel's fourth planet, Zephyrus, for eligibility of human habitation. Upon reaching Zephyrus, his engine securely is forced to crash land on the planet, alone and with little hope of survival. He must retrieve the fractured parts of his spaceship that he also impact if he has any chance of returning home. So the world the Traveller finds himself on is not a barren wasteland, but rich in plant and wildlife, and home to a sensitive species known as the Floations. The Floations are a hive mind, working in perfect synergy to protect and expand their colony. Similar to the hive species on Earth, their large numbers and loyalty to the hive make them very dangerous and formidable creatures. Having lived on Zephyrus for hundreds of millennia, they have established a clear hierarchy in their hive and have branched out to adapt to the different environments of their homeworld.
So as stated before, Enter the Void takes place on an alien planet known as Zephyrus. Zephyrus contains a wide array of environments, each with their own unique theme and setting. So for example, the four main themes in the game are fire, water, rock and poison. Not only do these themes help add immersion to the world and make it feel like a believable place, but also the enemies will be integrated with the environments. So for example, in the fire environment, the enemies might have fire abilities, and so forth with the other environments.
So following on from what Trent said, Zephyrus features a number of different environments, all with varying themes and aesthetics. The Floations in turn have evolved to mimic these environments, meaning that each level requires slight changes to strategy. Whilst the environments might change, the Floation structure ultimately remains the same, with all levels featuring soldiers, guards and Queen's Guard. It's only as we move up this hierarchy that these adaptations become more apparent. So the soldiers, for example, are the most commonly encountered enemy in a hive. And they're also the least varying, meaning that they're easier to strategize against. To combat this, however, they rely on strength in large numbers and have a very complex cooperative AI, meaning they'll often try to circle or corner the player. Guards, however, are much more varying in ability, and are much more adapted to their environments, with major traits such as speed, agility and fire rate all being fine-tuned to fit their level's aesthetic. Their combat abilities also change, meaning things like afterburn and fire-based levels, and pushback and water-based levels. This variation in mechanics keeps the guards much less predictable and keeps combat fresh throughout the game. So, after each level, you encounter a Queen's Guard. The Queen's Guard are a direct manifestation of their environment, meaning things like combat style, mechanics, and appearance are all reflections of their surroundings. Because of this, you'll never see the same Queen's Guard twice, making these boss fights extremely unpredictable and harder to contrive against. So we have two examples of Queen's Guard. The first is Grapho and Mogul. Grapho is the Queen's Guard of poison, and similar to pathogens and viruses, he's able to divide and multiply numerous times for offensive behaviours, and can reattach himself for protection or defence. Mogul, on the other hand, is the Queen's Guard of the water world, and possesses amazing speed and agility. Similar to the properties of waves and high currents, he also has the ability to jet forward and cast radial attacks. Using this theme of elements, we can produce a seemingly unlimited number of these combat mechanics and end-of-level bosses.
So the difficulty in our game will progressively get more difficult. So at the beginning of the game you'll start with just a pistol and you'll take on low-level enemies. This is so that the players can get well acquainted with the environment as well as the controls. So as you progress further throughout the game, enemies will get more difficult, so they'll come up with new strategies and tactics, so they might move quick or just take more cover, and that will make you have to think on the go. Also there's mini-bosses, as mentioned before, there's Queen's Guard for tactics mini-bosses at the end of each level. These mini-bosses are some of the harder enemies in the game, so they're a bit more difficult, but however they have more loot that you can collect. So to help the player out, we've added a skill tree which has 3 paths, which is light, medium and heavy. Each path has its own unique set of weapons and abilities. So for example, the light path will have pistols and SMGs. Due to the light weight of the weapons, the player will actually be able to move quicker. The medium path has more ranged weapons, so assault rifles, sniper rifles, and these do a little bit more damage, and you can take enemies out from far away. However, you won't have that added speed that you would get with the light path. And then with the heavy path, these are some of the more powerful weapons. So you'll have grenade launchers, Gatling guns, and these are very powerful. But to make sure that the player's not too overpowered, the player will actually start to move slower due to the heavy weight of the weapons. So also, our game contains power-ups. These are small boosts that will provide the player with an advantage. What's great about them is not only do they provide this advantage, but also they can work in conjunction with the skill tree. So for example, a player might use the heavy path and might have a Gatling gun, but you've got to remember you'll move slower. However, if you find a power-up that, say, increases your movement speed, if you activate that with the heavy path, you'll be able to move quicker with the heavy weapons, which gives you a bit of tactical advantage. So to make sure that, once again, we don't want to overpower the player, we want to add some difficulty to the game, the player can only use these power-ups for a certain amount of time. But to make sure that the player has more control, we'll allow them to activate it at any time, or they can swap it out with another power-up if they don't feel like the one they currently have is that good. So the combat in the game is mainly fast-paced. There's a lot of hectic and frantic gameplay, a bit similar to the gameplay that I've seen in Doom. However, there is an element of strategy to it, especially with the game's co-op mode. So in co-op, you'll be able to play through the solo experience, but with the added benefit of 3 other friends. Also with co-op, you can share loot with your friends that you collect. You won't lose any progress, which is good. So say if your friend moves or goes to get something to eat, you won't lose any progress at the end of that. One of our unique features is the skill tree. We feel not many top-down shooters really have an in-depth skill tree, so we feel that helps add a bit of fresh air to that genre, but also it helps the player tailor the game to their own needs. Also, another unique feature that we have is that despite the fact that it's quite fast-paced, there's also that element of strategy, so the player has to think on the go and come up with new creative ways of taking on the many enemies that you'll find in the game.
The audio in our game will be fast-paced, much like the gameplay that the user will be seeing as they listen to it. This means that the player will be playing the game as intended, and we can use that to our advantage by adding in different mechanics or environmental changes that could affect how the player plays at a certain time. And the game's AI, or enemies, will also have different attacks that sound very different to the user's ears. This means that they know what attack's coming at what time, and they won't necessarily have to be aware visually at all of their surroundings. And the cutscenes in our game won't be pre-rendered, they'll be done within the game's engine, which adds a bit of flow to the gameplay. And this means that the user won't have to wait, say, for load times or to load up a pre-rendered cutscene. The cutscenes will be used to say, display information at the start of a level, explain what the user is, or maybe display them delivering the killing blow to a boss. The HUD in our game will be simplistic as possible, with aspects of it appearing and disappearing when they're needed or not. A good example of this could be if you're fighting a boss, you will need the boss's HP bar along the top. However, during a mission, when the boss isn't there and he's not actively being fought, you won't need to see it, so it won't be there.
So similar to the game's play style, we wanted to keep the controls simple and intuitive to use, so players can jump right in without interruption. So our PC port will make use of WASD for 2D navigation. Escape will bring up the options / pause menu. Shift will activate the player's current ability, and the mouse input will be used to control the player's orientation and allow them to fire their current weapon. Similarly for our console port, the console controller will make use of the analog sticks for both orientation and 2D navigation. The trigger will be used to fire the current weapon, and the bumper will be used to activate the player's current ability. This simple control system also means greater porting capabilities, so we potentially target handheld and mobile platforms.
Physical feedback will be used in our game for players that choose the option to use a controller. This will be available on PC and console, just as long as you are using a controller that supports native rumble feedback. This means that you can feel the environmental changes or special attacks that are coming at you that may deal a lot of damage to your character, which could be fatal. And so the controller will be using vibrations in order to inform you about that. And the visual feedback will be used in order to alert the player of what's going on, say if it's your cooldowns or if it's enemy attacks once again, and where you need to go in the levels. So for DLC and bonus content, we've tried to not make the game pay to win as such, but give some players who've already been through the game and don't want to kind of trawl through content, kind of a long experience. So firstly we've got cosmetics, which would be purely appearance based, which could be weapons, armour, kind of clothing, outfits, whatever. And then the players will also have kind of miniature scenarios similar to like Headhunters in Borderlands. This means that players can run through quick and easy content to obtain gear that's not necessarily the best, but it's decent enough to give you a head start on an alternate character, for example.
So yeah, that's just been a brief overview of what Void has to offer. Thanks for watching.